Hey folks, Cornell with YouTube Fishing Vids. I've got one more jerkbait that I haven't quite customized yet right out of the box. This is a Lucky Craft Pointer 100. Fresh out of the box, I'm going to go ahead and do what I do to this jerkbait to make it suspend absolutely perfect to my liking with the hardware I choose to put on it. Right out of the box, these guys are great. I'm not going to change the hooks on a Lucky Craft Pointer 100. I'm not going to change the split rings. But one thing I am going to change though, because I've decided this year to go with the snap in lieu of the O-ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the oval split ring from the nose of the bait and add the snap to it right now. So by doing it right now and basically taking it to the test tank, I'm going to have the bait set up exactly the way it's going to be when I fish it. And if it's not doing what I want it to do in the tank, I'm going to bring it back over here. I'm going to show you guys what the next step is to make this thing suspend exactly the way it's supposed to suspend. So hang tight, guys. Let's go take it over to the tank. All right, folks, so we've got our beautiful little Pointer 100 here in the tank, and of course we've got now the snap on the nose. We've got the original hardware, original hooks, original O-rings, and we're going to go ahead and let her go and see what she's doing. And we got a slow rise. That's not uncommon. I've taken a little bit of weight off that nose by removing that split ring, but not much. But overall, like I said, out of these boxes, guys, you're never getting a perfect suspend right off the bat. Now this water's pretty cold, but it's not going to be probably as cold as the water I'm fishing, and it'll be a little bit more dense. A slow rise is okay when you're testing this, but this is just a little bit too fast for my liking. So I'm going to go ahead and do the next step and see if we can get this to suspend exactly the way we want it to suspend. So hang tight, guys. All right, guys, we got our Lucky Craft Pointer 100 dried off, and we're now back at the spot where we're going to customize this bait and get this bait to suspend hopefully exactly the way we want it to. And that's my choice is suspend strips. So you got suspend dots out there, you got suspend strips. These things are great. These are really easy to work with. Just a matter of unsticking them like a sticker, and positioning these are pretty simple. You're going to basically take these, or I'm going to take these, I'm going to put it right underneath the bill, right on the belly, and I'm going to take that whole suspend strip and I'm going to adhere that as clean and centered as I can on the belly of the bait. And I'm going to use the entire suspend strip at this point, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I've not put too much on there, and if I'm getting a sink out of the bait and I want to of course cut back on some of the lead, I'm going to come back over here and then show you guys exactly how I trim that suspend strip down bit by bit just to get this thing absolutely perfect when it comes to suspending in the water. So hang tight, back to the tank we go. All right, guys, here we go. We're going to go ahead and see what we've done with our famous little shake off the bubbles there. Of course, we don't have any bubbles on there. And we're going to let her go and see what we're doing. That's a lot better, but you see what we've done. We've got a sinker, guys. So, all right, so this is going to be real easy. All we're going to have to do now is trim back a little bit of that lead that we've got. We've got just a slow sinker. And by cutting back just a hair of that lead, we're going to get this bait to suspend perfectly. So let's take it back to the table and cut back a little bit of lead, see what we can do. Okay, guys, here we go. This is as simple as this. We've got our suspend strips. Now this is going to be maybe something interesting for you guys. I'm not sure if you all have ever tried this idea, but go ahead and try this at home. You're not going to hurt yourself if you're careful. If you just take any given knife and go at it on your suspend strip with just some gentle pressure and just do a little roll like so, you're not going to cut into that enamel paint job of that bait, but you're going to make a little crease in that suspend strip. So if you've done it just right and you got that little scrape, all you got to do is peel it away and you've just lost that tiny little bit of lead. It's that clean, it's that simple. So that's a little routine that I've grown to come accustomed to, and it works real good for me. So I've just taken that tiny bit of weight off. Hopefully I just didn't take too much weight off, but we're about to find out. Let's take that back to the tank and see if we've got a perfectly suspending bait. All right, folks, we're back in the tank. Let's see how good a job we did here making this bait suspend. And pretty darn good, but it looks like we might be getting a little tiny sink out of it. Let's see if I can position it good for you guys to see as it goes. There we go. That's a pretty darn good suspending bait. If you just pay attention for a couple seconds though, you're going to see that it's got a itty bitty tiny little sink to it. So that's not what we want. This water is just a little bit warmer than probably I'm going to be fishing. So what we're going to want to do is get this bait to at least suspend perfect or just rise a hair, because with that water being a little more dense when it's cold, it's probably going to suspend perfectly if I can get it to actually do a slow rise in this water. But yeah, if I sit there and watch this for a couple seconds, it starts to sink just a hair. All right, guys, let's take it back to the table. Let's cut off a little sliver of lead, see if we can get it just right. The suspend strips are real easy to cut, but in this case, you got to be real careful because you've got to do just a tiny, tiny little cut here to make sure this thing's not going to start rising on you too quick. So I'm going to go at this with just the absolute tiniest bit of lead. Do the same rolling deal. Get a little crease in that little piece of lead, and watch how little lead I'm taking off, guys. I'm talking, can you see that? That little sliver of lead I'm taking off? That's probably all it's going to take. I've done this enough to know that when you got a bait that's just barely, I mean, can you see that, guys? I mean, you can barely see that on my finger. That's all the lead I'm taking off, and that's how delicate a situation a suspending jerkbait is. You know, it just doesn't take much to get them to sink or rise on you. So I think that little bit we just took off is probably going to be just enough to get that bait to either sit perfectly still in the water or rise just a hair. Let's take it back to the tank and see how I did. All right, folks, we're back in the tank. Let's see if we've got this jerkbait suspended exactly the way we want. Here we go. And I think we've got a perfectly suspending jerkbait. You see that tiny slow rise out of it. That's pretty much how I have all my jerkbaits set up, guys. You know, this water, like I said, is just a little bit more warm. If I'm fishing in a little bit colder water, it'll be a little bit more dense. And with that tiny rise I'm getting out of this bait will be one mean suspending little jerkbait in some colder water. So yeah, that's the way I go with it, guys. It's as easy as that. This jerkbait was a little bit easier since I didn't do much more than change out the split ring on the nose of the bait to that snap. And, you know, depending on what you have to work with, you might be changing hooks, split rings and such, but it's not too much work to get a suspend strip, cut it down like I showed you, and get this bait doing exactly what you want it to do. And as always, guys, I appreciate you subscribing. Hope to see you out on the next run. Over and out.